Hey everybody, it's Carpo, and I would like to talk for a moment about the idea behind evil, and also a little bit about duality. This is kind of a response to two people, to True Ray and to Shay, because just Shay asked me to do a video about duality. So I was getting ready to do it, and while I was in the house a minute ago, I started the video and I messed it up and I went inside for a minute, and my wife was telling me about True Ray's video because I'd missed part of it yesterday. She asked me, because I was talking about evil, and she said, did you watch True Ray's video? Because she was talking about evil and how folks that don't believe in evil, she feels sorry for them. And I thought, interesting, what a coincidence, you know, because I was just getting ready to do a video. So I'm not going to cause, you know, obviously any conflict. I may have a differing opinion than True Ray, but it doesn't, I mean, I love her to death. This is my view on evil. Duality is the idea that there's equal parts good and evil, that there's a balance. And I could totally see how people see that, because there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. And through the years, I've found it angers me to no end sometimes. But lately, I've been able to get past that, I guess. And it's not out of ignoring the facts, it's out of acceptance of reality. But duality shows that, duality claims that there's equal parts of good and evil, the black and white, the good and the bad. And it's much more complicated than that. But in general, I believe that all is good. And I'm not going to go into details about why, because there are degrees of what we label as evil. But there's a quote from Plato, and Plato said, all evil is ignorance. And I totally believe that, and that's how I follow. Most of the evil that's committed in the world, what people call evil, is out of ignorance. And we call it evil because it doesn't fit with our moral values. Now, I have a book that I've had for about 15 years, and I've never really read into it yet because I just waited for a time when it was proper. And the book is called Ethics, Contemporary, Ethics, Theory and Contemporary Issues. And I was just kind of flipping through it this morning, and there was some really interesting stuff in here about, well, here we go, situational differences. This is perfect. I flip right to what I need. It says, and this is how people value and view evil, different forms of evil, or what's good and bad. Situational differences. Finally, people in situations, culture, and times differ in significant ways. The situations and life world of different people vary so much that it is difficult to believe that the same things that would be right for one would be right for another. In some places, overpopulation or drought is a problem. In other places, there are too few people or too much water. In some places, people barely have access to the basic necessities of life. In other places, food is plentiful and the standard of living is high. How can the same things be right and wrong under such different circumstances? It seems unlikely, then, that any moral theory or judgment can apply in a general or universal manner. We thus tend to conclude that they must be relative to the particular situation and circumstance, and that there is no objective or universally valid moral good. And that's just one part of it. Obviously, there are many degrees of moral issues and ethical issues. And ethics has a lot to do with evil, because if one group decides that we're going to fight a war for our God, and the other side says that they're fighting for their God, both sides are wrong. We know that. Many of us know that. They don't know that. They think they're doing what's right. Hey, it says kill the non-believer, so we're doing it. Are these people really evil? I mean, are the people who are out killing for the greater good evil? In their minds, they think it's okay. That's ignorance. Ignorance leads to evil. And evil is a good way to label things, but I don't think evil exists as its own entity. Evil just arises out of poor management skills of one's behavior due to ignorance. And I really stand by this strongly, because I think that once we create evil in our minds, we put a face on it. And this is how things like Satan and hell came to be. how about this? I'll read a little bit of this. The diversity of moral views. One of the reasons most often give in support of relativism is the existence of moral diversity among people and cultures. In fields such as science and history, investigation tends to result in general agreement despite this diversity, but we have come to no such agreement in ethics. Philosophers have been investigating questions about the basis of morality since ancient times, with sincere and capable thinkers pursuing a topic over centuries. One would think that some agreement would have been reached, but this seems not to be the case. It is not only on particular issues, such as abortion, that sincere people disagree. We also disagree about basic moral values or principles. A second reason to believe that what relativism holds true is the great difficulty we often have in knowing what is the morally right thing to believe or do. We don't know what is morally important. For example, we do not know whether it is better to help one's friend or to do the honest thing. And that was relating to an earlier story he'd said about a couple friends are out camping. One of the friends gets hurt really badly. His buddy puts him in the car, drives him 45 minutes to the closest hospital. When they get there, he knows his friend has no insurance. He's heard in his mind he's heard from sources that people who don't get insurance don't get as good of care. So he gives his insurance card to the doctors for his friend. Later on, both of them get caught and go to jail over it. Did he do the right thing? And this is the issue. These are the issues that we build in our minds. In his mind, he was doing the right thing. He was helping his friend. In society's issues, we have laws to regulate these things that provide for society as a whole. This is a very, very detailed issue, a very important topic, because it comes back to freedom. What do you think is freedom? And this is an issue that comes up over and over again. People tend to think today that freedom is the right to do as one pleases, and that's just not true. Freedom is not the right to do whatever you want. Freedom is inherent within a culture and dependent upon what is greater for the greater good of people. No issue in a nation of 350 million people, there's no law that's going to be made that's going to make everyone happy. And this is why I've learned to kind of accept where we are. I'm not angry at our government. I'm angry at certain people in it, and I'm angry at certain issues, and I'm angry at the military. But I'm not angry at the laws that are made. The laws that are made have mostly good intentions in mind, minus a few, backwards signed crap, which is why, when Congress signs anything, someone's always mad. And I've learned to kind of cope with that a little better by realizing that there are a lot more people that have a different idea of what's important than me. For example, drug laws. I feel I should have the right to consume cannabis. A lot of people have kept it illegal for a long time. The unfortunate thing is that that's been the case because of ignorance. So I consider banning someone's use of a plant almost evil, but that's evil arising out of ignorance again. If people had the information and they were given the proper information, then pot would be legal everywhere. So then there's that degree of what's suppressed from us and by whom. And now we say them, but who are they? And is it really just us as a whole? See what I mean? We place the blame on them, but them is ultimately us. No matter how much the government tries to supersede and take over our rights, the fact is we are still the government, and we are not out of control. It's up to your neighbors. Your neighbors are the ones that are voting for these issues. So let me go on here before I get off track. We cannot know for sure what will happen down the line if we choose one course over another. Each of us is also aware of our personal limitations and the subjective glance that we bring to moral judging. Thus, we distrust our own judgments. We then generalize and conclude that all moral judgments are simply personal and subjective viewpoints. We can consider the matter of diversity of moral views from two different perspectives. First, we can ask how widespread and deep the disagreement is. Second, we may also ask what the fact of disagreement proves. If two people disagree about a moral matter, does this always amount to a moral disagreement? For example, Bill says we ought to cut down dramatically on carbon dioxide emissions, while Jane says that we do not have a moral obligation to do this. This looks like a basic moral disagreement, but it actually may be due to the differences in their factual beliefs. Bill may believe that the present rate of such emissions will result in dramatic and serious harmful global climate effects in the next decades. Jane may believe that there are no such likely harmful consequences, for she believes that the assessments and predictions are in error. If they did agree on the factual issues, Bill and Jane would agree on the moral conclusion. So, that's what the speculation says. That if given the right information to make a moral judgment, then two people are more likely to make the same judgment call. I can see this as being relatively true as a societal issue. I mean, we have... most of the disagreements we have are based on predispositions, ideas about how things should be, could be, would be, or more often what we're told. So there come back to the ignorant factor. The word ignorant, ignoring the facts, not being aware of the facts. It's become a dirty word. If you say you're ignorant to a person, they're going to take it offensively no matter how you place it. You can say, well, you're just ignorant of the facts. No offense. They're still going to be offended. Ignorance has become a bad word because we all want to think we're informed on what's going on. So we come back to evil. We have one group of people who thinks that the other group is evil, and that other group thinks the other group is evil. So who's right? The group as a whole believes one side or the other. If 52% of the world believes something is evil, is it? Now, a good example is when a war starts. Now, if 60% of people in the nation approve of the war when it starts, is it morally right for that country to do it? Now, say 3 years into the war, all of a sudden 40% believe in the war and 60% are against it. What does that say? What does that say about whether it's evil, whether the moral ethics are correct, whether the morality was right? You can't determine that. You can't go back in time and retrofit it to say, oh, well, it was immoral the whole time. If you do, you have to admit that you'd made a mistake, that society had made an error in judgment. So therefore, the moral issue of it changed. In that sense, evil cannot exist, because evil cannot change. Evil is either evil or it's not. Now, I don't really know how to put it in a way that's doesn't make me sound like I'm ignoring the truth, because I don't want to seem like I'm ignorant of evil. But there are very few situations that people have ever given me where I can actually say, yes, that is evil. The ones I usually get are about murder, child murder, rape, pillaging, that kind of stuff. And most of those stories I can trace back to ignorance. And ignorance, being unaware of the facts, being raised in a poor environment. In the ancient times, people would say, well, those people were possessed by demons. But many philosophers in the past know that demons, as they would say, the demons are under the front doorstep. Your demons are always under your front doorstep, and that's an old term. It's because your demons are always right there, and it's not something that's external, it's something that's internal. Now, when we externalize God, we externalize evil. But when a person becomes to internalize and realize that we're all the same essence, when you believe in non-dualism, all of a sudden, evil becomes part of humanity. Therefore, evil can't exist because of what it is. So maybe we put a different label on evil. Instead of saying it's evil, we call it ignorance. Ignorance, can cause all kinds of problems in this world, and it always has. So that's where I stand on evil. I don't believe it exists, but if anyone can provide me any specific situation where evil has not arisen out of ignorance, then I'd be glad to maybe, I guess I can't say that because I've looked at a lot of different angles from it. I've even looked at the person who sacrifices, like let's say cultures like the Mayans, who people revered so much. They were sacrificing people, on altars, and we look at them as these primitive fools. In their minds, they were doing it for the right reasons. They would sacrifice people and throw them down the pyramid. They would sacrifice people from the other groups or people from their own groups. But then we find out later that it was more of an honor to be sacrificed quite often. It wasn't they were evil people. They were cutting throats. They were ripping out beating hearts. But in their minds, they were doing what was necessary for the next year's crops, to bring rain, to bring food. And many of the issues today, the big issues, say like the Holocaust, were caused by one or two madmen who influenced those around them from their sphere of influence because they were such powerful personalities. So the Holocaust derived out of ignorance too, the ignorance of the people to follow a leader blindly. And it set as a good example to things to not do in the future. But it seems like we're still kind of doing it. My view on the world is that people are waking up. I don't have a defeatist view anymore. I used to. I used to think that humanity was doomed and we were totally screwed. But all I know now is that if I learn my values and I keep my integrity and I teach my 3 kids to have that integrity and they teach their kids to have that integrity, I can only hope that in a few generations we wake up. I think the unfortunate case is that we're overwhelmed because the internet has brought to light a lot of new things, a lot of new what we would call evils, and a lot of moral issues and ethical issues that we want resolved right now. All of a sudden we see these new truths and we want laws passed tomorrow. We want laws passed yesterday that change all these things. But it's not that simple, because we have to sit back and realize that every time we want a law changed, or we find a piece of paperwork, or something that passes through Congress, or even just a community issue, we need to really think it through and think, is that benefiting the majority of people? It's like the old moral issue of, if a guy comes up and says, and you see him loading a gun and he says, I'm going to kill these 10 people sitting here, and you have a chance to kill him before he kills 10 people, is it a moral issue? And there are what they call absolutist moralists who believe that killing is wrong no matter what, period. And that's just it. Like, hey, it's in the Bible, and that's usually where these things come from, is text. But these are people that haven't thought it through completely. It's like, okay, killing is wrong no matter what. And they say, well, what if this person's going to kill 10 other people? They say, well, that's God's will. But if you are killing someone, isn't that God's will too? If you are part of God, it goes back and forth, and the banter goes on and on. And that's why people get confused, and they want everything written down for them. I don't like to demean anyone's belief system, because I think that everyone has valid points, and I think everyone's basing what they know on what they've learned. But I've found personally that most of the people who discount, who believe in duality, or discount the fact that moral issues are more complicated than just surface, nothing's black and white, are just ignorant and ignoring it on purpose, because in their subconscious they don't want to analyze the fact that things are very, very intricate, and they fit into this web just like the web of life. Every single action has a reaction, and that reaction causes 10 more actions, and it goes back and forth. And it's a constant cycle of energy. So what you put out, you will get back. And I had the choice in my life to either say bad things to people, be mean to people, to be rude to people. I know people who are rude to checkers. I know my brother's rude to the person at the toll booth, let's say at the on the bridge, because he doesn't want to pay the toll. And I said, why are you rude to that person? He said, oh, because they shouldn't have a toll on this bridge. So, but it's not his fault. You know, he just works there. That's an ethical issue arising out of improper blame or casting, projection. We all project onto each other our shortcomings. And so the best thing we can do is, when we cast as an insult or say something we don't mean, is to look at it and ask ourselves why we did it. Because it's usually something deeper within ourselves. All I can say is that I know if you're living right, you know it in your heart. And when I make a mistake, I know it more and more. It's like I've been able to feel into that mistake. And I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong. But on non-dualism, I'm sticking with my guns on that one. I don't think that... I just don't believe in evil. So that's my take on it. And so namaste to you all. Peace and love. Harpo out.